In the gospel, Jesus invites us to look at this word or this attitude of vigilance, to be vigilant. What does that word mean? And I want you all to just think about that for a second and in your own minds, come to terms with what that word means, because if we don't understand that word, then we're not going to understand this gospel. And I know that there's probably many definitions of that word vigilant or vigilance, but I think we could probably describe it as an attitude of care that one takes, caution, being aware of one's dangers, possible dangers. And you could think, well, how do we do that? How do we do that, or are we doing that? Because the gospel message is that Jesus will come when the servants are not expecting it. Throughout all the Gospels, that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, be ready at all times. At all times. And I guess we can ask ourselves the question, if Jesus were to come today, would we be ready? If he were to come in 15 minutes, would we be ready to meet him? Would we be in the state of grace, first of all, but also would we have that attitude or know that in every moment of my life, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing? You know, in the responsorial psalm, it says, "Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will." And I think that attitude has to do with being vigilant. How do we be vigilant? We live in that attitude of, not my will be done, but your will. Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will. It's about God, not about us. And if we live in that attitude, then there's no need to fear, because we're being vigilant. There's one of the saints, I think it was Saint Mother Teresa, who said, holiness consists in doing what he wants and wanting what he does. So the first part is simple. It's doing the will of God, right? We know what the will of God is. Follow the commandments, try to pray, come to Mass, pray the rosary, etc., etc. Follow our obligations in our vocation, in our state of life. But what about that other part? To want what he does, to want what he permits in our life. That's part of being vigilant too, because we're preparing ourselves to meet Jesus through that acceptance of any crosses that he permits in our life. And each one of us, I imagine, has his or her own cross, but we have to think of those situations as a way that I can sanctify myself, that I can become closer to God. Because I don't know about you, but I was thinking the other day, how quickly time passes. Life flies by. And if we're not careful, if we're not vigilant, then we can look back on our lives and say, man, these last 5 years, these last 10 years, I haven't been the person I know I should have been. I haven't been a prayerful person. I haven't been an accepting person, a peaceful person, a loving person. And vigilance is living every moment as if it were our last. That's so important. Because one of these days, it will be our last day. It will be our last hour. It will be our last minute. And we like to think that that only comes to us at the end of our life after, we've lived 90 years, 100 years, we're in our bed, and it's a slow, painless death. That's how we'd like to think of it. But we just don't know. We don't know if it'll come in a moment. And at all times, be ready. That's what the Lord is calling us to today. So let us say with the psalmist those words, and we pray for that same attitude. Here I am, Lord, I come to do your will.